Hi everybody, Matt here from Matt Likes Comics. We're going to have a little fun today because I decided it was time to do a Superman comic video. Although I do a bunch of Superman comic videos, sometimes I do a few other ones, and every so often I need to come back because I love the Super family. What can I say? What I decided to do this time was I grabbed a bunch of books from just after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when the Superman mythos rebooted following the Man of Steel series by John Byrne. And what I wanted to do was get a few books that, continuity wise, brought back some of the characters that was there before Crisis, and, how they were introduced. So I got myself this nice notes I've written about the books. So I suppose we should enjoy. Okay. Basically, these books are just after the Crisis, as I said. Jerry Ordway is involved on every book, whether he's the writer slash penciler or just the penciler. John Byrne is the writer for a good chunk of these because John Byrne was the writer that really set off the whole crisis, post-crisis Superman thing. And most of these books were inked by either John Beatty or Dennis Janke. Yankee, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but Dennis, Janke, so I'll say Janke. All right. This one is The Adventures of Superman, number 436. Now, it's interesting. These are all Adventures of Superman, by the way. And it's interesting that they continued the numbering of the original Superman series while bringing out a brand new number one Superman, while keeping the Adventures, keeping the series number. I don't know why that was done. It'd be something I should look up. Okay. After following Lana Lang on her in her Manhunter agent guise, Superman is confronted in Smallville by Dr. Whitney. This is the doctor that has delivered pretty much every baby in town in Smallville. Superman then suddenly wakes up in a Manhunter ship and finds out that the doctor and his wife were actually sleeper agents. They had killed the real doctor and wife and taken their place. The Manhunters were originally trying to intercept Kal-El's ship, but the Guardians intervened to make sure that the ship got through okay. Superman discovers also that the town's older folk, including his foster parents, are in stasis chambers upon this ship. Superman then discovers that he can control the ship with his willpower. Making the ship lose control, Dr. Whitney then self-destructs, turning out to be a robot because all the Manhunters were. And Superman sees all the other sleeper agents die as a result. Now, this is during the Millennium event, by the way. For those that don't know what Millennium was, basically it was an attempt by a group of robotic beings called the Manhunters, who were created by the Guardians of the Universe on Oa to be their agents of protection. And when they turned out to be unreliable, then they created the Green Lanterns. So that's a little bit of background on that. This one is also part of the Millennium. This is Adventures of Superman 437. Lex Luthor invites Celia Winderward to dinner, or Windwood. Ha! I can't read my writing, I swear. Celia Windwood is introduced in other parts of the Superman books, and she plays an important role later. To dinner, where he tells her a tale of a hypothetical battle between Superman and a villain named Combator, using the story to show the inherent danger of superheroes. Meanwhile, Lois goes on a date with Jose Delgado, and they are attacked by the real Combator. Combator tries to take Lois as a hostage, but he is confronted by the Gangbuster. A fight ensues. And then Gangbuster wins the fight, but loses his legs in an accident during it. Oh boy. Okay, Superman eventually brings Gangbuster's helmet to Luthor, telling him he knows that he's the real creator of the Combator. All right. Adventures of Superman 438. Clark goes on a date with Cat Grant, accompanied by Jimmy Olsen and Cat's son Adam, at a circus where there is a mentalist named the Amazing Brainiac. Are you seeing a hint here? A crisis occurs where Superman is needed to stop an elephant running amok. Superman deals with the elephant, no problem, and it turns out that the trainer is abusing the creature. Superman stops him from doing so. Meanwhile, Lois Lane visits the funeral of the Combator. The Combator in the last issue died of cardiac arrest during that issue, during the fight with Gangbuster. Okay? So he just wants to she wants to convince the parents of Lex's evil, where the parents are very, very, proud of Lex Luthor and all that other stuff. Remember, in this time period, Lex is a businessman who basically runs Metropolis through his money and such. He's still an evil character, of course, but most of the people don't believe he's evil. That's the key here. Okay? So back at the circus, Cat and Jimmy overhear a man by the name of Milton Fine, who is the mentalist, arguing with someone. Fine is an alcoholic. That matters later, apparently. Milton tells Grant a story about a planet named Kolu and a man named Viral Dox. In the meantime, Clark is talking to the bearded lady and is suddenly hit by a mentally backlash at the same time that Milton Fine is. Turns out Viral Dox has taken over the body of Fine and uses his mental powers to push Superman around. Eventually, Superman defeats him and Fine is put into a mental hospital. So this is the new Brainiac for the post-crisis. Adventures of Superman 439. A robotic Superman is damaged in a fall, and when he wakes up in the hospital, thinks that he's the real Superman. Turns out he was built to answer calls that Superman can't always get to. Meanwhile, Cat Grant gets kidnapped by a armed militia group and is tortured for information. But the robot Superman manages to save her before he is completely destroyed. That one's pretty simple. Still can't read what I've written. The Adventures of Superman 440 is next. I like this cover. It shows Superman getting hit by lightning, which actually happens in the book. That's why I like this cover. Superman is fighting Emil Hamilton, who is testing out his new force field belt. Turns out he's the one who had built the robot from the previous issue. Meanwhile, Jerry White, who's the son of Perry White, Jerry and Perry, has visited Jose Delgado in the hospital, the gangbuster. Jose then gets the news that his nervous system cannot be repaired and he's lost his legs for life. Lois then visits and makes him feel better about himself. Meanwhile, Superman meets up with the Batman, who gives Superman a scrapbook that reveals he is Clark Kent. This is the same scrapbook that was used in earlier issues of the Superman series to try and determine who Superman's secret identity was by Lex Luthor. Meanwhile, people are beginning to think Superman is a robot because of the stories that had happened with Cat Grant and all that other stuff. Superman finds that he has a few incidents to deal with, and then he arrives home to find out that the scrapbook was made by his mother. Deferring a conversation, Superman goes to meet Wonder Woman for their date, and they kiss. Yes, there was a time period during the New 52 before he got involved with Lois, not the New 52, sorry, the post-crisis era, that they tried to set up Wonder Woman and Superman. That was more done in another title, but I digress. This is a fun one. This is Adventures of Superman 441. Mr. Mxyzptlk appears again to antagonize Superman. First, he makes a Big Belly mascot from the Burger Company alive that shoots hamburgers at the Man of Steel. Superman tries to make Mxyzptlk go home by saying his name backwards, but the rules have somehow changed. And as he has no choice now but to play along, Superman gets thrown into a reality where he has to deal with live Saturday morning cartoon characters. Finally, he's able to confront Mxyzptlk in a TV studio where Mxyzptlk tries to turn Superman's face blue. Superman allows it, and thus Mxyzptlk, having accomplished his goal, turning his face blue, decides to go home. An interesting, fun little story. I mean, it makes no sense, but Mxyzptlk's stories never do because of the element of fifth dimensional magic, so it's one of the reasons that those stories are a lot of fun. Next up, we have Adventures of Superman 442. Having had his powers stolen by a creature named Dreadnought, he has to run away during a fight. Lois, meanwhile, is taking Jose home from the hospital. She confronts some thugs who are hassling a homeless woman in front of Jose's building, thus revealing that she is an expert in martial arts thanks to her father. Superman wanders the streets, feeling alone, while Dreadnought is still chasing him. He finds himself at Dreadnought finds himself at the pier, and suddenly Aquaman comes to fight him, and he finds that his power is being drained. Next up, we have John Jones, the Martian Manhunter. Same thing, the powers are being drained. Meanwhile, Clark Kent, having changed, shows up at Emil Hamilton's asking for a certain device. We have a small little thing where May, who's the name of the Matrix character who is going to be Supergirl, runs into Lana Lang, whose personality from the other Earth she had taken on, but that's detailed with more later. The Elongated Man shows up to the Dreadnought fight. Okay. Shazam also shows up to fight with Dreadnought. There is a character by the name of Siphon that's actually draining the powers. And they realize that draining Shazam's magical powers is overloading and making it impossible to continue. Clark Kent then shows up wearing the force field belt and defeats Dreadnought. They then disappear, Dreadnought and Siphon, and it turns out that apparently they were just probes for an alien civilization wanting to conquer Earth, and they've discovered that that's just not possible. Not with all the heroes. Next up is a book that's actually been reprinted a few times. This one is called Adventures of Superman 443. Jimmy Olsen and Clark Kent have been put on an assignment to discover what has happened to another reporter, Henry Caulfield, Henry Canfield, who has been kidnapped a year before. Meeting a friend of Kent's, they enter Israeli-occupied territory just outside of Jordan. They are ambushed by Islamists, and Jimmy is taken away suddenly, leaving to be safe, that is, leaving Kent. Jimmy is approached by a strange woman and follows her to the desert. It turns out that Canfield escaped a year ago and wandered into the desert himself. Clark has now turned into Superman and goes to find Jimmy, who's using a signal watch. A creature comes out of the sand as Superman approaches. Turns out the woman is working with the Beast. Yes. Jimmy and Superman are teleported to another universe somehow. Superman is forced to fight against a whole bunch of arena fighters and is captured. We find out that this group of people captures humans for what they call matrixing, where they take over their bodies, their souls. I won't get into the full backstory because it's long. When Tara, who's the name of the girl that Jimmy followed, when Tara is... Okay, sorry. Tara teleports into Superman's cell and helps him get out because she wants to save her brother. Well, so when Tara is discovered being in there, Superman uses the distraction in order to escape and get into fights again. He manages to defeat the Emperor, who is immediately replaced. Jimmy is found alive, but in what did they call in limbo. He's in a coma because someone tried to take over his body. Superman gets attacked by a giant robot, but it turns out the giant robot is the creature that they fought back in the desert. Jimmy manages to come around just as the fight is going badly, and they discover that Canfield was taken over by the Emperor and thus is dead. They return back to Earth. Nice little wrap up in terms of this story, because this one went on for a few issues. I need to point out that the Superman books back then, there were 3, and then they added the 4th. There was Adventures of Superman, Superman, and Action Comics. And then they added Superman, the Man of Steel later to give every 4, and that's when the Triangle Years started. This is before Triangle Years, but they still followed the stories like, bang, here's the Superman part, and then the next issue, then the thing, whether it was Action or Adventures of Superman, and so on and so on. So a lot of stories crossed titles, and that's why the stories here are not complete, per se. Next up, and this is an example. This is Adventures of Superman 444, which is part 2 of the Supergirl saga, where they talk about Matrix, the one that became Supergirl post-Crisis, and she's the Supergirl from the funeral for her friend. Superman is actually mourning the loss of Superboy from Legion 38. If you get a copy of Legion of Superheroes Volume 338, you'll see what happened. With his adoptive parents, and learns about the sad state of the pocket universe Earth after Superboy's disappearance from his reality. From reality, like Superboy's own reality. As told by the Lex Luthor of that dimension, while investigating the disappearance of Superboy, he stumbled upon 3 Kryptonian criminals who he didn't know were criminals at the time, in the Phantom Zone of Zod, Zaora, and Quetzal, and he ended up letting them loose. Well, the criminals went on a destructive rampage and killed everyone by burning off the atmosphere. Only those in Luthor's citadel survived, which was Lana Lang, who became the Matrix. He made a copy. Sorry, the Lana Lang died, but he made a copy, being the Matrix that becomes Supergirl. Luthor sent Supergirl to get Superman's attention after he discovered the new universe that Superman lived in. Superman then joins the Resistance force in this issue. This, by the way, leads to the storyline where Superman actually executes Zod and the other two with kryptonite in Superman 23, I think it is. And here's the last book I'm going to cover today. This is Adventures of Superman 445. Superman feels guilty and angry for executing the Phantom Zone criminals, so in order to remove their threat to the multiverse of, like, outside of the Pocket Universe. Perry White tells Cat Grant that her alcoholism is ruining her career. Meanwhile, Brainiac, Milton Fine, is looking for a way to stabilize his host body, which requires some special chemicals. When Superman arrives in Metropolis and finds out that Brainiac has actually kidnapped Cat Grant, he goes to fight Brainiac. Brainiac then reads Superman's mind, and is, because he's overcome by all the emotions Superman is feeling from killing the criminals, he ends up in a catatonic state. And that's the book. There are so many Superman books, Batman books, Amazing Spider-Man, etc. All the ones that have high numbers. And the differences in stories and the amount of stories that they're able to tell is great. And it's one of the reasons why I like these long-term characters. I shared some books today because I wanted to show a little bit. I've done a lot of Silver Age and Bronze Age, and I haven't quite got to modern yet, but I really liked the early post-crisis when it came to Superman. So I thought to myself, why don't I grab a box and pull a bunch out and show them to you? So that's what I did. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and comment below. In the comments, I'd like to know if you've read any of these and enjoyed them, what you thought of them, or if you've read other post-crisis Superman stories and thought they were cool. I mean, you've got Superman #1 where Metallo gets reintroduced. You have whole bunch. The Silver Banshee shows up for the first time in the Action Comic run. There's a bunch of books. Bloodsport shows up in issue 4 of Superman. There are a bunch of first appearances of characters. These books are actually a little undervalued as far as I'm concerned. They should be $10 to $15 books instead of the $2 to $5 that they are at the moment, for at least some of them with first appearances and such. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you liked it, because my name's Matt and I like comics, and I hope you do too. Have a good one, everybody.